Welcome to the 2019 NRL Grand Final special on the Betoota Advocate radio show. I'm Clancy Overall, editor of the Betoota Advocate, joined, of course, by Errol Parker, editor-at-large. Now, if you're listening to this podcast and you don't know how, it's probably because you've opened up one of our NRL Grand Final special stories. And if you want to pause this podcast, you can find it just under the second paragraph. For everyone else, thank you for tuning in. We're recording live out of Baxter Booth's studio in downtown Betoota, and today we have a very special guest as an NRL club journeyman, if you will, but also a growing voice in rugby league journalism, rugby league media, and he's here today to spill the beans on the culture that is rugby league, what has changed since he was playing not that long ago, and what remains very much the same. He's also going to give us some analysis and some predictions on this Sunday's grand final showdown between the Canberra Raiders and the Sydney Roosters. You're listening to Errol Parker and Clancy Overall, editors of the Betoota Advocate on Desert Rock FM. Last weekend was a dismal performance in the AFL. A lot of people were left questioning whether it was a practical joke, watching those poor buggers from GWS get kicked around the park. But, you know, the real big dance is this weekend. It's a Raiders-Roosters grand final, Canberra versus Sydney, the historic rivalry that is. And to talk about it today, we've been joined by a visionary rugby league media personality. I guess you're not used to that term. Probably one of the more prominent voices in rugby league media, and he's one that's allowed to say whatever he wants because he's not beholden to anyone. Denan Kemp from the locker room. How are you, mate?
Very good, thank you. It's visionary. I think that's a bit extravagant.
Rugby league oracle, yeah.
But I'll take it.
Now, mate, you had I guess you were kind of like a bit of a ponger coming up, weren't you? You were kind of bouncing between codes before settling on rugby league.
I mean, probably nowhere near as good as Ponga. So maybe
I thought you were up there.
Home brand Ponga.
Home brand, black and gold Ponga.
Black and gold Ponga. No, I played a bit of soccer actually. Well, a lot of soccer. I didn't play any rugby league growing up.
Yeah.
I was fully into the soccer. I was going to go to England for it all, and I just was mucking around with some mates at school in a thing called Confraternity Shield, and basically a coach came to me and said, well, look, what would you do if an NRL club was interested in you? And I was like, oh, whatever, I'm just having fun because I just wanted days off school because I had nationals for soccer the next week. Yeah. That's why I wasn't going to go. I didn't want to get injured. Yeah, at the end of the carnival, I won this player's most potential, but I actually just come down with like really bad sickness. So when I won the
glandular, some teenager,
something like that, something from some sexually transmitted disease or something like that,
bashing in a blue light.
Even though I was still a virgin, but whatever. I got player with the most potential. And I was sick. So when I got it, at the time, you couldn't speak to anyone before a certain deadline. Yeah. So Ivan Henjak, the Broncos, ended up being a Broncos coach. He just said, look, I'm sorry if you're with another club, but you've won the award. If you want to come to our development camp, blah, blah, blah. Because I was sick, I was just like, yeah, whatever. I didn't even think about it. And then I went home, told my parents, and they called Broncos, and they're like, look, he doesn't play rugby league. He's got nationals for soccer. What does he want to do? And long story short, they were really interested, and then AFL actually became interested. And because they found out a kid could switch or whatever. So I had a meeting with the Brisbane Lions actually. And they just said, we'll fast track you if you come across to us 6 months, get you to the draft. And I just had to make the choice, I guess. And I went because I was with the Queensland Raw in A-League. The A-League was coming in the next year. So I went to them and they just said, look, because I was 16, I think, at the time in the reserve grade side. And the first grade side was the one that played in the A-League. So I was, in the system to play A-League or whatever. Dario Vidicic, I used to play with him and all those boys. And so I decided footy.
So how steep was the learning curve going into the NRL? You had to learn to tackle, had to learn to pass,
mate,
had to learn to use your hands. Really.
Oh, mate, it was honestly, so the first training session I rocked up, first of all, we had tackling on the pads, and because when you play soccer, you have no traps. Like I know it's true. I've got some traps now.
You got a neck.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, exactly.
Had a neck.
Exactly. Now I have no neck. So the first session it was on the diamond pads, and they're just shields that go across your chest. And and for anyone that doesn't know much about footy, this is warm up. This is nothing. This is juggling a soccer ball to warm up. I did 2 tackles and I had to stop because I was cramping from the impact. Yeah. And also I'm tackling the best players in the country because it's the Broncos and,
Wayne's still coach?
Wayne was a coach, yeah. And so he was actually the one that asked them to fast track me to go to because I was supposed to go to the development camp. ended up going to their elite camp, fast track to the elite camp. Anyway, so did the first session, like 72 kilos, completely fish out of water. Didn't know the rugby league culture was very. The camaraderie, the banter was totally different to soccer. Soccer, you had to call the coach sir, and you weren't allowed to walk around in thongs. And if you didn't have a water bottle in your hand, you'd get fined. Like, it was completely different.
Even on the Goldie.
Oh, absolutely. Because in the Queensland sides and everything like that.
Yeah.
So,
really?
Absolutely.
Is that because everyone's kind of from like staunch ethnic households?
Oh, it must be. Honestly, it is completely different. It might have changed now, but when I was
piggery of the NRL was a shock for you.
It really was. It really was. When we'd sit in circles and they talk about what they do on the weekend, I was genuinely offended and shocked. Like, I was sitting there going, "This is crazy." Like, I remember one dude did whatever on the weekend, and it just came out of me. I was like, but why did you do that? That's so wrong. Everyone just burst out laughing at me like, who is this clown? And anyway, so the first few years were really hard. The culture shock, the culture was actually the hardest thing to learn. The game was relatively easy because I was on the wing and fucking wingers do nothing anyway. And the worst thing about me was, like, they say wingers hang out with footy players, but I didn't even do that because I had no mates. But yeah, it was really hard. The culture shock was the biggest shock. But the learning curve was, at the start, they didn't think I'd move as quickly as I did.
Yeah.
Actually, it was like the few weeks in, all the young boys, the like under 19s Broncos side, because there was a under 19s at the time, they said to us, they went around in a circle, and the reserve grade coach was pointing to all of us, and he pointed to everyone and said, "You're ready for reserve grade," basically saying, like, it's up to you to work hard. And the only guy in the group, he was like, "You are not ready for reserve grade." And I was like sitting there. But yeah, so it was good though. Like, it just. What's weird is when you're young, you just think you can do anything.
Yeah.
Whereas if now, I'd be like, oh, fuck, I don't know. Like, it's a big jump. Like, what am I doing? I've never even played before.
How do you reckon you would have gone if you'd kind of stuck with soccer? Do you reckon you would have played overseas?
Well, my brother was with Nottingham Forest, and so they were just below the Premier League. So he was 17. They would have been 18.
Yeah.
And he just got picked up with them. So, I'd made all the Queensland sides, and overseas is such a... I don't know. I know. I definitely would have played A-League. Like, right. But it's it's A-League.
It's hard in England though, but fuck, it's big coin over there, isn't it?
Oh, massive. But the thing with soccer is you can go to some fucking Lithuania or something and earn like fucking $800,000 or something.
Yeah. There's a few more options.
Yeah, well, unbelievable.
Outside of the eastern seaboard.
So yeah,
mind you did end up at the Warriors.
Oh yeah, I did end up with the Warriors.
Now you got Kiwi background.
No, it says it on my wiki, but I don't. I don't know who put it there. It says Turkish as well, not Turkish. It was fun actually.
So you just played in New Zealand. That's all they got.
Yeah, but again, it was that because I hadn't been in the rugby league system, I didn't understand the ramifications of going to the Warriors. I didn't know that there was a long history of careers buried over there, of Australians going over there and struggling. Yeah. So again, that was just don't get me wrong, the place was fantastic. If you could take Auckland City and put it in a good weather area, it would be one of the most beautiful cities in the world.
Yeah.
Would be. On the water there, all of it. Oh, I mean... I'm not going to go down
South Auckland.
I'm not going to go down. Like, you know what? I went to South Auckland once to train because we had training for reserve grade out there because I got dropped.
Yeah.
And it was the first time in my life where I was like I'm the enemy here. It was intense. Like driving through there, people looking at you, they could tell that you're obviously not from there. Mm-hmm. I spent a lot of time in Logan in Brisbane, which is the rough area of in Woodridge. Yeah. Even there was nothing compared to when I went through South Auckland. I was genuinely like, wow, this
Logan
is
on steroids, Mount Druitt on steroids.
It was intense, intense.
Yeah, it wasn't spiky enough.
Oh mate, it was exactly, and also it was like I was in America. Yeah. I don't know. It was just intense. It was really intense.
That's where you finished up your. You ended up back at the Bronx after that.
Back at the Bronx, went to Union, but I came back to the Bronx and I had 2 good years there. Yeah. But at that stage, so much footy politics had happened to me personally with contracts and all that kind of stuff. By the 2011, that's basically when I'd mentally clocked out of being like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. Went to the Union for a bit, hated it. Went to Dragons for a bit, quit, stayed in Wollongong. 2013 rolls around. I'm just working, pouring beers, and went on a massive bender. Woke up to a missed call from the Broncos, and they're like, "Look, do you want to come back to the Broncos?" So I went back to the Broncos again on no coin. Got named, made my way all the way back into first grade. got named to play. It's like 1,000 days since I'd played. Told everyone, I was in the papers. Fucking everyone's excited. 2 days before the game, the coach calls me and he's like, "Oh nah, Reedy's sweet. Like, you're not playing." And I was like, "Oh my god, he's supposed to be out for 4 weeks." And I got named at 2, so not even 18. 2. It's announced everything. They announced it that I'm playing. Anyway, to rub salt into the wounds, he dropped the other winger and put a forward on the other wing. And that's when I was like, what am I doing? Like, this is crazy. Like, this is
out
not
of a briefcase.
Oh man, I was on $25,000 a year.
Ooh, that's it.
That
is almost like if you were getting paid that much pulling beers, you could take that to court. You know what I mean?
It was crazy. It was crazy. And even so, in my debut year, it's changed a lot now. But my debut year, so obviously, give myself a rap here, but I scored like one of the tries of the year. I ran for the most meters ever in a debut, everything like that. I was on $30,000 plus match payments, and then the next year I was on $50,000 plus match payments.
Well, that's a lot more than you would get paid playing rugby league in Lithuania, I guess.
Yeah, fucking know. But in saying that, you can get away with anything in Lithuania because no one knows who the fuck you are.
A bit like playing rugby league in Darwin. Now, tell us a little bit about your post-career. You've, as we said before, you've gone out and done a bit of media yourself, and you're doing your own stuff, which is very rare. Most footballs that end up in media, they walk straight into that FoxSports contract or that Channel 9 contract, and providing they behave themselves, they're there forever, as long as I can string a sentence together. But you've kind of gone out on your own. One, you've opened up your own pub, and you've got your own podcast. Do you think this whole kind of going out there and doing it on my own, kind of breaking away from the clubs and the institutions that all the blokes stay at, even after they stop playing footy, do you reckon that comes from being a bit of an outsider in the league? Like, going and making a quid for yourself and not kind of relying on a ambassador role in the game?
No, I mean, you're totally right. Like, I didn't really think about that, but you're totally right. Don't get me wrong, it took me a few years, and eventually, like, I understood what I needed to do and how I needed to act to be accepted by the boys. But even growing up through school, I was always a bit an outsider in the sense that I had a certain way that I did things. Yeah. And sometimes it's hard to deal with if you're not, thinking the same way, which is probably, it's fucking my fault, not theirs, because I'm the one everyone else is getting along and I'm not getting along with them. But yeah, totally right. It's genuinely because I feel like I've got a specific way to do things, and I feel it can work, and I guess got the confidence to try to push that way. And I never want to be. It sounds really arrogant or whatever, but I never want to be working under someone that I'm smarter than. Yeah, you know what I mean. I hate like I was doing my and that's no disrespect to. It's just in a certain area I feel like I've got things that can be pushed forward that maybe they haven't thought of. Yeah. So for example, like as a sparky, because when I quit, I did my mature age electrical apprenticeship. And
that's some good coin, actually. Mature age apprenticeship. Was that?
It was like 25 an hour or something like that. 26
I thought it was a bit better than that.
No, I think it's like 26 or 27 an hour. But it's torture because you go on these sites and these guys are really good at being a sparky and better than me, way better than me. Yeah. But like they treat you like shit, and it's so hard because you're getting treated like shit. But you're older, you got to cop it, and they're making you go like. We used to work on out in Goulburn. Yeah. Apparently it's like on average coldest place in Australia, like with the wind factor or whatever.
It is a cold fucking place.
Oh, it's so fucking cold. And so like we'd be working in like balaclavas, whatever, and the leading hand would he'd go, "Can you go get us a screwdriver?" I'd go walk like 800 because it's on a big mine, above ground mine. I'd walk like fucking 800 meters to get it. Come back and he'd be like, "Oh, can you just go get us some cable ties?" And he would just do shit like that to me all the time. So it was, and I guess that scarred me for the workforce.
Do you think he was doing it on purpose?
Oh, absolutely. Oh man, I mean, I had plenty of run-ins with guys that were just trying to staunch me. Like,
big shot footy player.
Yeah, they just wanted to be able to go home and be like, yeah, he works for me. He's a shit kicker at where I work. I was like, I mean, I am. You're right, but you don't need to be so mean about it. Hurt your feelings.
Did you experience that in the pubs once you do sign for a footy club? Footy players tend to get baited a bit by punters out there who want to wind you up.
I think so. I think especially in this day and age, like when I was coming through, there were fights every weekend. Yeah. So that sorted it out. Yeah. So like if for example, at the Normby once, there was a guy and he said something to great place. Don't you dare say one bad thing about it.
Sunday
it's a beautiful place. But it is very, very rough. But yeah, so I was at the Normby, and so I was 2008, so I was like peak of my career, and I was the NRL top try scorer at the time. And it got into like basically a fight, like push and shove, like, you know, melee, you know, head pushing, everything. Like, it'd be sent off on report if it was on a footy field these days, with a slap. And so, yeah, that happened. Huge drama. Like, we all get cleared out, put out the front. If that happened today, 100% in the news, it's a massive drama. Instead, went out the front, went home, woke up the next morning, got a call from the owner of Normby. He's like, come in, I want to have a chat to you. I was like, yeah, sweet. He's like, here's the tapes. Just going to delete them. Yeah, sweet. It's all good. And you know,
the Broncos.
Yeah, and that was the end of it. And that should be the end of it. Like, no one got hurt. Like, this guy tried to fight me. Yeah. And I, you know, stood up for myself or whatever, and that was it. Like,
no iPhones, no nothing.
Yeah, there was none of that. So, you know, whereas I feel like today you can say anything to anyone. If they hit you, boom, assault charge.
Rennie Matua and Willie Mason came in at the start of the season. We had a little chit chat. You know, dogs of war. Everyone knows how loose they were, but even they said, and I'm interested to know your opinion on this. Things have changed. You can get in trouble easier, but do you think the boys are playing up more? Like that last off season
was a bad one.
It was pretty wild.
Honestly, no.
No?
Absolutely not.
You reckon nothing's changed?
No, I think they're better.
Yeah, right.
I know they're better. You know, obviously outside the allegations and
The things before the courts.
And things before the courts, that's a completely different ball game. But when it's like, you know, blokes hooking up with chicks and all that kind of stuff, I think they're better. I think you would be... The public, I mean, again, it's the context of the time. We always think like, we judge the past with current standards. Yeah. And so we always look back and like, you know, oh, that's so bad. And we're looking at it from today's lens, but we don't realise it was a totally different time. You know, even 10 years ago, like smartphones have changed everything. We're accountable for everything and anything at all times. When I came back in 2013, compared to when I was at the Broncos, like, and this is just a, you know, example. It's not like, as bad as what has happened in the off seasons, but just even the banter has changed. Like they had to tell the boys of 2013, guys, you've got to stop, you know, ripping each other to shreds. Where I was coming through, you just got annihilated, and there was no off limits. Your career, you're a bum, you haven't done nothing. Your missus is this, your missus is that. So it was, and it built a really thick skin because at the start it really emotionally
coming from soccer, you poor bloke.
Yeah, just getting smacked. And also the worst thing is because I did come from soccer, I was already a fairy.
So, and you didn't have a very quick, you know, tongue either.
So I'm just sitting there like with my head down, going, oh, okay, I guess I am a piece of shit. And so. Yeah, I definitely don't think they're any worse, and I think that if smartphones were around 10 years ago, you would be shocked at the things you saw.
There are other avenues for them to act up now. With you didn't have to play with online gambling around, did you?
Oh yeah, that's true. I don't really know anything about gambling, so that whole environment to me is foreign. So
I don't think that is like in the scheme of things. It's in the AFL too. People betting on their own game. Young blokes can't fully think things through. They're not hurting anyone, but they're surrounded by online gambling sponsors the whole time.
It's in their face constantly.
Yeah.
If I went online and the access to things that you can fuck up on is just crazy. Like the amount of negative comments, like some of the stuff people write, you're just like, mate, you have the IQ of a fucking a dog. Like just some of the stuff people write is crazy.
A dumb dog.
A dumb dog. A dumb dog. They're not as bad, but they have more opportunities to be bad. I agree with that. They definitely have more opportunities to make mistakes.
Although, just on that, just quickly, you know, how the attitudes now are a bit different. If a couple of Titans boys came into your bar and acted the goat, did you think the tapes would go missing?
Absolutely. Oh man, there's no.
Let's just give the bar a plug. What is it, boys?
It's called Bloke in the Bar on the Gold Coast.
Bloke in the Bar. Whereabouts in the Goldie?
Broadbeach, just up from Loose Moose in the Oasis Shopping Centre.
Yeah, righto.
I know it's biased, I know it's wrong, and I know it's, you know, if I don't really consider myself a journalist, but in saying that, people may look at me like that, but I'm absolutely biased towards the players, and I'll openly admit that. I'll always, if there is a 50-50 call, I'll always take the players' side.
Yeah, right.
And that was from the start. I've always said that, and I'm open with that, just because I feel like the negative idea of being biased doesn't outweigh the bias from the media looking to tear them down. So if I can just be that tiny little fucking pebble, I'm okay with the ethical dilemma of being biased because there's so many people being fucking biased on the other
jump
end.
on them,
Yeah.
Where do you reckon would be the best place to play footy? And like Townsville, Newey, is that where you get looked after the best?
Fucking Newey would be good, man.
Yeah.
Newey, Townsville's a bit small for me, but Mad Cow, great place.
Yeah.
Fuck Newey, they love it.
Yeah.
Like, especially if you're
journos,
winning.
cops, everyone's looking after him.
Yeah, and if they're like when they were winning, can you imagine if they made the grand final?
Yeah.
Like, although imagine being in Melbourne, like you'd get to be invisible.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, like the positive with everyone frothing on you is you can get away with anything, and I feel like the Newey boys can get away with quite a lot.
Yeah.
And whereas Melbourne's fucking too cold, fucking me dead.
And being invisible is actually not what they want. You know, you want a little bit of...
Oh, you love it. You know what? I love the attention at the start. When I was younger, like, you know, if I was to play now, I think it'd get to me a bit because I'm older and like I realise it really doesn't mean anything and you're just the flavour of the month.
Yeah.
But when I was younger, I fucking loved it. Like, fuck, you know, you're young, you're fucking stupid. I was
single,
There's no chance I'm going to get any pussy otherwise. Like, fucking hell. So, yeah, I did enjoy it.
Now, tell us a little bit about this match this weekend. What are you thinking?
Oh, man. I mean, the Roosters are just so good all over the park. But and it's easy to get caught up in this momentum that they've created for themselves. But they've lost against the Rabbitohs twice, Knights, Panthers, Broncos. So they definitely can be beaten. They definitely can be beaten. And then also you look at their completion rate, it was 71%. They had less possession. And I think Storm's completion rate was like 75% or something like that. Whereas both teams, Raiders, Canberra, was 80%. Rabbitohs actually had like fucking nearly 60% possession. Yeah. So I don't think the Raiders are as far away from the Roosters as people think. Especially when you look at that, you know, that they had nearly 40% possession. There was something like 37 tackles in their half. They defended it, and the Rabbitohs have beaten the Roosters twice. So you'd have to think that Roosters and Raiders are two of the best defensive sides in the comp. The Rabbitohs, when they're on song, and are one of the best attacking sides, especially at the start of the season. So I just think that if the Raiders' attack can be incredible, you know, BJ Leilua just breaking tackles. So, for example, Nick Kotrick last year broke the most tackles in the NRL period, more than Tedesco. Joey Leilua and Rapana, I think 2016, were also the most tackle breaks. They're their points of difference, I feel like, could maybe... And then you've got Papali, so if they can get the back of that. So I don't think they're as far away as people think they are.
Do you reckon Raiders have peaked at the right time? That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Because, you know, Newey obviously did what they do best and peaked way too early. And they had a big streak. But yeah, Raiders feel like they're almost at the zenith of their season right now, which is probably a good spot to be.
Yeah, I think really now, at this point of the season, there's only one way to strike a difference, and that's, you know, if you put Jack Whiten and Luke Keary against each other, because when Luke Keary has a great game, the Roosters win. He's the cornerstone of every Roosters sort of victory, and he's also the cornerstone of every loss they've had. So I think
that's a good point. Very good point.
I think that's going to really be the key, the Raiders' ability to shut down Luke Keary.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And also, in the second half, when the Roosters struggled a bit, Keary was very quiet because he'd injured himself.
Yeah.
And the way he landed on his ankle, that's a re-injury of an old... You know, if that's a fresh ankle, there's no way that's injuring him.
This is the type of match where they reckon Papali's been sent to just put a shoulder, land on that ankle.
You know what? I reckon they're going to say Whiten, and Whiten loves it.
Yeah.
I want you to do anything you can to try and run at him, hurt him,
Piss your pants, get in his face.
Headbutt him, whatever you need to do. You know what's devastating for him? I mean, obviously, what he did was terrible, and, you know, let's get all the disclaimers out of the way. What he did was terrible, but I feel like his reputation, he's actually Ken Blue from what I've been told.
Yeah.
And so, like, I get all these comments like, oh, he can't, like, on photos and that, like, oh, Whiten can't throw him. I'm like, the biggest damage done to him is his reputation as a fighter. Because he looks like he can't fight.
Just looking at that video too, I mean, that was a night out in Canberra. If it wasn't a Raiders player doing to you, it's some feral, other bloke in Canberra. But
if it was in Townsville, would this have been an issue?
Yeah, it would have been a
Newcastle?
tree falling in the woods. That's what it would have been. But also, you know, you can see when
Jake, get in the car. Come on, mate.
Yeah,
you know.
People would have. You see people getting baited too. You know, like a young rugby league player is no different to any bloke, and you see He's getting out of a cab and someone yells something at him, and
Yep.
that's it. But anyway, this weekend, will he piss his pants and getting Kiri's face? That's
if he
remains
pisses
to be
his
seen.
pants, is a guaranteed Clive Churchill. Surely he wins a Clive Churchill.
Yeah.
First bloke to ever piss his pants.
Outside of what was old mate's name, Russell Packer.
Oh, well, he just pissed on the field, so that's fine.
There's a good energy right now, and it's obviously reminiscent of 2014 with the Rabbitohs, when kind of the fans want to believe now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're going to, the Rabbitohs had the bell, Raiders are going to have the horn.
Yeah.
Mal Meninga's coming back to blow the horn. It might just have to happen. You know what I mean?
If that isn't memed the shit out of,
Yeah.
I'm fucking disappointed in Australia. I think that if we're living in a fairy tale for this to happen, I think everything is happening for it to happen.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's a fairy tale, so the chances of it happening are relatively small. But again, I just think that Raiders have everything to play for. Whereas the Roosters, and they do have a lot to play for, Cronk and that, but you're working at such high percentages or small percentages of like extreme excellence that when you need to go to that extra spot, and the Roosters have proven they can, but when you need to go to that crazy, insane Dave Goggins can shit yourself spot, the Raiders may just have that extra step in them because they're not going back to back.
If we're talking about the fairy tale, Cameron Smith would have got 400 games in a premiership in his last season. That's done.
Yeah.
That's done. So Cronk, we can forget about that. You know what I mean?
It could happen to Croc. Like, this is his last game. He has been at the Roosters for years. They are
They fostered that talent.
They are a club that fosters talent. They go out and they find it and they nurture it. They plant it and they water it year after year after year. And I just think that Cronk, he kind of deserves to go out a winner. But in saying that, I don't think it'd be good for the game if the Roosters win back to back.
Yeah. Don't want to snatch the snatch victory from the jaws of the 4 Englishmen that have just arrived in Canberra. Speaking of fostering talent,
can you imagine? But can you imagine if the siren goes and the siren goes, the Roosters win.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, they deserve it. They worked their ring out, all that kind of stuff. Siren goes, Roosters win. Yeah, great. We're all happy. Well done, Cronk.
All their made-up fans are loving it.
Yeah. All the bandwagon Bondi fans that literally never go to any games ever.
The Waratahs fans.
The siren goes, the Raiders win.
Yeah.
I think, the jubilation, it's not against the Roosters. It's more just like, this is a club that is in Canberra for one, and no disrespect to Canberra, but it's a tough place to go to move people that live majority in Sydney and Queensland and Brisbane and all that kind of stuff. So they got that extra burden of trying to recruit. And they get pommies there because England's even worse. And they don't even have the New Zealand factor of like they've got a whole country to pull from. They've got a tiny place. It's hard to recruit. They haven't been in the grand final for 25 years.
Yeah.
So all of these things, if they won, it would be.
But we've seen it before. Like, if it's meant to happen, it's meant to happen. Like the Bunnies, Roosters. Bunnies, Cowboys, and Sharks. Really, the wins in between those three have just been back to status quo. Really.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Storm
true.
Roosters.
That's so true.
So it'll be great for the game, and it probably will happen. But we'll wait and see. And I'm not putting my checkies anywhere.
Just so Roosters, man, they're just so okay. You hold them in there for 4 tackles, and then Tedesco takes a fucking scoot and gets a fast play the ball, and that's what they're so good at. Like you shoot out of the line. I think that if the Raiders can do what Queensland did with Papali leading them to New South Wales, and that was just this crazy line speed, that will go a long way to being like the Roosters. Playmakers don't have as much time.
He's got some toe.
Papali. Oh,
how much do you reckon he's over 100?
He'd be at least 115, I reckon.
Really?
At least.
No. How much do you reckon he's over 100 metres?
Oh, 100 metres. Man, for a big boy, 13 seconds, I reckon.
Yeah, he's fucking fast.
Yeah, for a big boy, 100%.
And it's got a real cannonball kind of effect too. Like that try he got on the weekend.
Mate,
just kept moving.
A lot of inertia.
And the thing is, he's got the perfect frame for footy because he's thick and he's not too tall.
Yeah.
So really hard to chop.
Yeah. And he's got that conservative Queensland Islander haircut, good church boy.
Yep.
He's got the short back and sides. I'm a big fan of that look.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Izzy used to have it until he put the blonde in the front. You played with Izzy? How was that?
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard because you got everything that happened.
Yeah.
And it's like if I say he was a good bloke.
Yeah.
And we got along really well.
Yeah.
I'm a piece of shit. Apparently,
everyone says that. Everyone says he was a great bloke when they were playing.
Well, I just think that people, like, again, I totally do not agree with anything that he has said. Like, so let's get the disclaimer out. I don't, at all. But like, I think
you're telling us you're not a hyper orthodox.
Yeah, I think
Pentecostal.
I think that people, like most people, don't genuinely believe in Scripture.
Yeah.
So I don't think people really understand. He genuinely thinks that. Like, if you really think that people are going to hell and you're a good person, you would actually try to warn them against it.
Yeah.
And so people don't understand that if he, and this is not excusing him, I'm just saying this is his mindset.
Yeah.
He genuinely thinks that if these people do this, they're going to go to hell.
Yeah.
Like, if you genuinely believed that if you drink that water, you're going to hell.
Yeah.
Like, you fully believed it.
Yeah.
You would consider yourself a bad person, you're going to hell. you would consider yourself a bad person for not warning that person that they're going to hell. And so I think, like, when people, it's, again, I'm not sitting, it's totally wrong. And also he's with a private company, blah, blah, all that kind of carry on. But yeah, I think people need to realise that he genuinely thinks he's helping the country.
Now, blink twice if...
I'm gay. I'm actually gay.
No. Blink twice if he wasn't a good Christian at the Broncos.
No, I'm not saying none of that shit. Bro, I'm not going 6'9" on all this shit. No way. Now, you know what?
Yeah,
he was... When I was at the Broncos with him, not excusing anything, but he was a great guy.
Yep.
We were great mates. We spoke a lot. Played outside him.
Mm-hmm.
He was my centre. When in the under-19s Queensland side, he was my centre. Yeah, I mean... He was just he was a nice guy. He was genuinely just a nice guy, but that doesn't obviously excuse what he said.
So if it comes down to golden point, which I think it will, I think they will be evenly matched because you've got a backline on both teams that hasn't shied away from kicking field goals all season.
Yep, that's true. That's very true.
That, as we've seen in like other ones that have gone to golden point, like what happened in the Cowboys game when they won, you really had a team that only had one really, really, really good person who could kick a field goal.
That's very true. Mm-hmm. Very true.
But here, this will be much different. So
that's very true because Caesar, he kicked like 4 field goals against, who was it, Manly, I think, maybe, or whoever it was.
Was it Dogs, maybe?
Dogs or someone. No, that's a very good point. They both have people that can genuinely nail the field goal and are good at it.
Now, tell us a little bit, like, what kind of... You didn't come from a rugby league family. You came from a soccer family. Brother played soccer. Were you kind of the first to engage in NRL?
Oh, absolutely. We didn't even watch rugby league growing up. Yeah, I couldn't even... It was something. It just wasn't on in our house. My dad
started learning their names and you started breaking their records. Ran off to Kiri.
What's funny is when I debuted, I didn't even know what all the numbers meant.
Yeah, right.
I only knew what the outside backs was.
Yeah, right.
Like I didn't know what 11, 12, 13 were. I just like their forwards, 10, 8. Didn't have any idea. Yeah. So, we literally didn't watch any rugby league in the house. We didn't even have Channel 9 in the house.
Yeah, right.
We only had Channel 2 and Channel 10, I think.
SBS for the soccer.
Well, no, not even that, because we live in Mudgeeraba on the Gold Coast.
Right.
And they had these massive trees that blocked the signal.
Okay.
So we only had Channel 2 and 8 or whatever. I think it was 8 or 10 or whatever it was. And so we couldn't even watch it even if we wanted to. Yeah. And I was a massive nerd growing up. So I'd do sport all week and then just play video games all weekend. So I didn't really watch much TV growing up.
Yeah, right.
And or any footy.
And so was your first experience with Bush League? Like you went up to the Clydesdales.
Yep.
Did you have to sign a lease in Toowoomba or something?
No. We would travel. Up there. So it was a Broncos reserve grade side. There was only I think it was one local guy that actually played for him. But yeah, so we would train all week in Brisbane, and then we would travel up each weekend if we had to play there, or we would get because most of the teams are in Brisbane. But yeah, so that was a Queensland Cup. So at that stage, most players in your side in the Queensland Cup was 13 of them were NRL players kind of thing. Right. It's a bit different now where they've spread it all out over different teams. And I'd say the Queensland Cup isn't as strong as it used to be, but with the 20s comp gone now, it might be. But it definitely did drop off for a few years there.
Yeah.
It was pretty strong when I was coming through.
And tell us a little bit about your dabble with sevens.
Yeah, it was weird how it came about because when I was leaving the Broncos, I didn't want to leave the Broncos, but they told me basically you should leave. There's certain things agreed to that they didn't come through on. Went down to the Melbourne Rebels actually, and they were interested. They said, "Look, we're keen to have you. Here's we got the contract, everything like that. You can't say anything for 24 hours. We just got to speak to a few people on the board to make sure that everything's sweet." Anyway, so I told the Broncos, and like the next day they were quoted saying that I'm going, and that canned the deal.
Fucking hell.
And I told them not to say anything, but I think they were just so eager to push to make sure that I'd gone, that they tried to push it out through the media and that. And so I was in a terrible position where basically they rang me up and said, "Oh, don't worry about coming into training. We just don't feel like your heart's in it because you went down to Melbourne." Yeah, there's so many stories like that.
A few people have that as well with the machine up there.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like they control the narrative. Like as a footy player, you
can't.
They're
still owned by the newspapers then too.
Yeah, you look at, for example, you look at the everything that's going on right now at the Broncos. There's like all this information coming out. Who do you think's putting that information out? The club. The club puts the information out. Why are they doing it? It's typical business PR 101. They have a massive loss. If they stay silent, the fans blow up and say nothing's changing. So we're going to go on this massive PR push of all these changes and chopping blocks and blah blah, and we're going to release this guy and we're going to release that guy because they need their fans to think, oh yep, they're devastated. They're really going to change things around there. But I think you find there won't actually be that many changes next year.
They couldn't control the narrative around Lodge, though. That's one of the more bizarre things that's happened in rugby league in the last few years. Like, why are they defending a guy who's obviously... And it's not like he did a Mitchell Pearce, and gyrated something like Puppy Dog, which was nothing in hindsight.
Yeah.
He's
Take me back to those days.
Yeah. He got suspended and shit.
Well, it was like fucking killed someone.
It was
dog.
Yeah.
It was in New York though, so I think it might have been a bit harder.
Yeah, but there's video. Like everyone knows what he did, and he's kind of admitted to it.
Well, there's also pre-existing criminal charges before the New York thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just think I think if it was a bloke, because there was a woman and child involved, it takes it to a whole new level, especially with Vision, and you were charged. It happened. There's no rumours, innuendo, dismissed, not dismissed. And I think also the Broncos have had a pretty clean skin for a very long time. So the media just were like, well, we got something to run with here. Like this isn't the doggies that have had a rough 10 years or whatever. This is clean skin Broncos that never put a foot wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I felt like, I think the Vision really hurt him as well. Yeah. People seeing what happened.
Yeah, but the Broncos for years were owned by the same people that own the Courier Mail.
Yeah.
So that obviously now they're not as a protected species.
Yeah.
But the club is still like vehemently defending their decision to possibly make this guy captain. It's that is not a good PR narrative.
I think what they're doing is they put it out to make so this is how bad it can be, and then when they do announce the captain, everyone's like, oh. Thank God. And like, so for example, it's in the video game industry, but they do it a lot. So they'll put out these leaked information about the price of something.
Yeah.
And then when they release it, they drop the price. Everyone thinks that some progression has been made.
Managing expectations.
Yeah. So I think with the Broncos, like for example, let's say they just went out and named Gillette. Yeah. There'd be a whole core of audience that would say he's older. Why are we? He struggled for form or whatever it was. I think he's a great leader, a great guy. Andrew McCulloch, they've got all these senior players struggling for form. Whereas now they've put out this like case where, it's not even in Lodge's best interest to be captain because anything bad goes wrong, his whole past gets brought up constantly. So I feel like they've put out this like left field, like crazy worst case scenario. So whoever they name now is going to be a positive.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I just reckon that they're so good at like managing the media and everything.
Baiting all the ex-players like Glenn Lazarus. I will hand in my life membership.
Oh my God! There's no way they seriously. They're a club that I think the year that Bennett came back, they made $33 million or something like that.
What?
They're the only club that makes a massive profit.
Yeah, right. So members came back when Wayne did.
Well, like what I'm saying is that's how much profit that they can make.
Yeah,
no other club's coming close to that.
Yeah.
Warriors broke even for a bit.
Yeah.
And I think Melbourne Storm may have gotten close to breaking even. Everyone else makes a loss. Broncos are a well-oiled business machine.
Yeah, for sure.
So they understand.
And have been since day one.
Oh, absolutely.
That Powers partnership they had, no one had ever seen a sponsor like that before.
Yep.
And they've kind of, NRMA, they've managed it well, perhaps because the club isn't run by ex-players in many capacities.
Yes.
Except for, of course, poor old Andrew G. But another thing is they have a 4 or 5 million person city and they're the one club there.
Absolutely.
So there is talk of another club in Brisbane. There's a talk of another team coming up somewhere.
Yeah.
Many argue, and you're on the ground on the Gold Coast, you could just bump the Titans at like an hour north and rebrand them as something more Brisbane.
Yep.
Where would you put it? Would you think, like you've seen on the ground, would you see Ipswich or Redcliffe, or where would you say?
it's such a tough call, man.
Yeah,
you know, you look at the ones that, like, the Titans have gone, you know, they've struggled so much for so many years.
Yeah. I mean, you grew up in the Gold Coast and didn't even go near rugby league.
Yeah, I didn't
accidentally.
Go near. So, and also they were aware of a kid, you know, crossing codes, and there was never an approach from him. I mean, they had Luke Keary in their Burley side, and they had nothing for him the next year. Luke Keary. Yeah. He's going for his second premiership.
Yeah,
but they've got Kebra. They've got fucking Miami High. They just can't.
They got Kebra and PBC, who are two of the best rugby league teams in the country. Yeah, and yet they never seem to recruit any players from those teams. So, and I understand, like, it's very hard to recruit a kid when you've got bad history and you haven't won a grand final, all that kind of stuff.
But it's got to be better, like them being local kids. You know, they might be playing for the Bugan Seahawks, you know, but they could get them and have them play at the Goldie, you know, because what ends up happening is these kids get signed to Balmain from one of these high schools and they go down to Wests and then they kind of lose their spot to a local guy and they end up plastering in about 6 months and you never hear from them again.
It's so true.
Or they could have just stayed at home with mum and dad and played for the Titans.
Absolutely.
So whatever's happening in the Gold Coast, maybe there isn't enough kind of people around to create a fan base. You know what I mean? It's too transient.
It is very transient. Like we've noticed, like with the bar and that, we noticed it's a lot of tourists, and obviously it's in Broadbeach and that. Yeah. But there is an idea of the Gold Coast in Australian culture. That it is a holiday destination. Yeah. It's a relaxing destination, and I really feel subconsciously.
Bucks parties, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. You know, fake hot chicks and steroid dudes and you know, all that kind of stuff. That is a stereotype throughout the entirety of Australia, and so I feel like there's this subconscious thing that when players go there, it's a whole, like, there's it's the Goldie, it's the lifestyle's great. Whereas, like, when you go to Melbourne, you're not sitting there going, the lifestyle's great. It's cold. Yeah, the coffee's good.
That's it.
It's cold. You're going down there to work. It's going to be tough. Canberra, you're going there to work. Townsville, Brisbane, like, it doesn't have the same reputation as Gold Coast has. So yeah, Gold Coast is tough. No franchise has ever gone well there. Yeah. So is it time to cut and run? I don't know. I honestly don't. Maybe they move it to the Ipswich because you could still kind of argue that it is a south-ish and it's west, but
expansion club.
Yeah. I think whatever the solution is, I don't think that the answer is going to be calling the second Brisbane team the Brisbane Bombers or having. You could have a second team that's based in Brisbane, which is like the home ground for Ipswich and Redcliffe.
Yep.
And just call it, the Brisbane, I don't know, anything.
The South Brisbane.
Literally.
Well, the Jets, anything. The Ipswich Jets is what they call it. The Brisbane Jets, whatever.
Yeah. Whatever the answer is, it's not going to be made. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's the NRL are famous for making the wrong decisions.
It's true.
Non-stop. Yeah. Like they're great for repealing bad decisions, but they're never good for making a great one in the first place. So we'll see what happens. Until then, the Broncos will keep marching on as like the official successful business in the NRL.
Oh man, absolutely. It's crazy how much people don't realise how much resources they really have compared to other clubs, and they're not even number one in third party. But when it comes to just a well-oiled business machine, I think in any business world they would be considered a good quality company. Yeah, right. Regardless of and so I think that from that side, that's why they're so good at handling these situations, like all this information that's coming out. They've been in the news cycle for 3 weeks. Yeah, it's grand final. Yeah. They had a Seabold thing about he has a clause in his contract that he has to get paid 12 months of his contract, but they can terminate his contract. Yeah. Who said that? Yeah, of course the Broncos said that. Yeah. They leaked that. And so a lot of people don't realise this, but you're being manipulated. That's what fucking PR is.
Yeah. Now, speaking of PR, who else you got on the locker room coming up? You got anything?
Got Sean Kenny-Dow.
Yeah, right.
That'll be really good. I got him on Wednesday, and I got Corey Harawira-Naira. Yep. Can't say his name probably because I'm Australian. But yeah, Sean Kenny-Dow will be really interesting because he's such a perfect case of, we saw this stuff obviously he had an incredible career. Let's not dismiss that at all, but we saw this stuff in the media with, DeBellin and in the court cases and everything that have come their way, and he was a guy that was falsely accused, according to the courts and everything like that.
Bit of a Brett Stewart scenario.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see, and obviously we're not going to go deep into it and get talk. Like, I don't want to upset the bloke when talking about his career. He's in there, starts crying because he fucking went through so much shit for no reason. Yeah, but he'd be really good to hear his thoughts on that. He's a footy player. He was clearly incorrectly charged. Yeah, his name will always be connected to that. Yeah. No, he'll
Every
never
pub he walks into, someone will say something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's coming on.
You would have seen a very different landscape changing over from soccer to ethnic landscape anyway, demographics wise.
Oh, absolutely.
You wouldn't have played with many Islanders in soccer.
Zero. You know what's crazy? It's like my first real experience with Indigenous culture was in rugby league. I had none growing up. Like it wasn't in like they taught us about the Dreamtime. It was a Catholic school, good school. And I think it was just more, again, we're looking at of today's standards compared to 15 years ago. It's a very different environment. So I think today it's more in curriculums. But my first experience with Indigenous culture was just footy and meeting them.
Playing with Hodges, getting told I'm a fuckwit. And he made my whole career. Actually, there was an Indigenous family, Lacey's and the Appos, that took me in. So I was driving up from the Gold Coast pretty much every day of training because I was on a $4,000 contract. $4,000 for the year. $4,000. Yeah, $4,000. That was my contract for the first year. No match payments, just in Resi's $4,000 contract. And so I would sleep on their floor for the first 2 years. Just the experience of a different environment of like what's mine is yours. That Indigenous culture that obviously we have that in Western culture, but there is a very, for example, I stayed at their house on the floor, and they never were like, "Do you want to pay rent?" Like you're eating our food, you fucking don't do anything. You're a piece of shit on our floor, and we've got to clean up after you. It wasn't like that. It was just like you do your bit, we'll just you sleep on the floor. There was never you sort yourself out.
Just whatever. Like there was. It was. It's hard to explain until you experience it. I think that Indigenous culture of like. They call each other their mob, but it really is like that. You go to their house, they put massive feeds on for you, and there's never this exchange of like, I did this for you, therefore. And whereas Western culture, I feel it's more accepted for like, if you're sleeping on my couch, mate, you've got to like just chuck us $100, which is sweet. Like there's nothing wrong with that, but that was the first,
or just what that's symbolic of, you know. What I mean? Just so on top of that, you got to meet all those different people, but you've also got to see the rise of. And they've been around, but there's definitely a takeover coming from the Midlands. The kind of Yorkshire Englishman is making their mark. I mean,
I'm enjoying it.
You reckon? Do you reckon that's changed the game?
I think it has, because you look at Bateman, you look at Sutton, you look at the Hodgson, Burgess, Graham. They're just like they've come over and they've impacted the league. It's not like they came over and just made the numbers up.
Blended in,
So I think it'll really, we look at, for example, we often point towards the island nations like Fiji, PNG, Tonga, Samoa, Cook Islands, like we should scout there early. But I feel like people will start looking, maybe we should scout England early. Massive population.
A lot of hard-headed fucking big English boys too.
Absolutely. Massive population, and they've proven they've got the genetics to do it. And so, I think you'll find that there'll be a lot of scouting going on, like especially with what Ricky's done this year. Like without the English boys in their side, there's no way they make the grand final. Not a chance. It's a very cheap alternative to finding the next Fijian flyer that's 6'7" and runs 110.5. You know what I mean? It's a very. So I think that I think it has changed the game. I agree with you there, definitely.
Well, all the best to the Milk this weekend, and and the Roosters if they win. But we like to be on the right side of history here at the Betoota Advocate. And thanks for joining us, Denan.
No, thanks for having me. I'm a long time fan of the Betoota Advocate, so thank you. I appreciate it.
We're big fans of Locker Room too, and if you want to check that out, just find it anywhere where you find your good podcasts, your podcast pipes. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Denan Kemp, Locker Room, Bloke in a Bar.